Okay, this poem is called The Smokehouse by Yusuf, and basically it's about how killing and experienced death chips away at you, which makes you lose your innocence. Like in the beginning of the poem, he starts it off with a very positive connotation by using words such as hickory scent or glistening with salt, or he talks about how he played Indian in a headdress of redbird feathers, kind of introducing it to set up like putting meat on a pedestal and saying that it's something that he really enjoys. And then slowly in the poem, like when he starts talking about winter, he describes it as dead weight, and he says like it's strung up in sections, and he continues on to talk about how it's kind of like a hazy world. And at the very end, it's very negative connotation when it says that his heart grew more human and flawed, and because his heart is lessening, becoming like more cold-hearted, and that the killing has an effect on him. In the very beginning, he uses a lot of like prepositional phrases and stuff for his description. He doesn't really elaborate on a lot of things he says. Like he keeps his sentences short, but they're all like really effective with the prepositional phrases and the negative and positive connotation he puts.
Yeah, and one of the big things is, like, immediately when I read it, I thought that it was making a lot of references to childhood. Like, I played Indian in a headdress of redbird feathers and brass buttons off my mother's winter coat, like, bringing up his mother, so obviously it's just like a kid with his mom. And then talked about how he was a wizard, used as a metaphor, like, saying that he has the power, but I think that, like, taking that even further, it could just be like innocence and not just strictly childhood. And then, based on Yusuf Kobanyako's background, we thought that maybe in a sense, because we couldn't find anything like to specifically tie him to like the literal meaning of this poem, so we thought that maybe in a broader sense it could be talking about just witnessing death in general, not just the death of animals in the smokehouse and the killing of animals, but kind of like the animalistic way that people were just killed right in front of him in the war, and just how you, like, it eats away at a person, and how you go from being innocent, and as soon as you see that, like he says in the end, I knew I could cut slivers of meat till my heart grew more human and flawed. So as he loses innocence, his heart is becoming more flawed, and just kind of referencing or like saying how the world is kind of becoming a bad place, like talking about how it's a hazy world that kind of is obsessed with death. And I think that I could cut slivers of meat kind of goes, like, now he thinks that it's more bearable, like it's not as big of a deal anymore, which I think says a lot.
Yeah, when I first read the title, before reading it, I thought it would be about animals because the smokehouse is where animals go to get slaughtered. And after reading it, I still think, I mean, it does talk a lot about animals, but I think it's definitely referring to, like, death and war, and it's just, the poem is one giant metaphor for how, like, life was for him and how he handled death when he was out at war. Like, he says a lot about, like, a map scored into skin, open like love, from snout to tail, the goodness no longer true to each bone. So, I mean, even just when he says the goodness no longer true to each bone, that's, I think, a lot of the main idea of the poem, because, you know, it's saying that in the beginning, you know, he thought it would be good, and, you know, he was kind of naive, and once he experienced death, you know, he didn't see, like, the world the same anymore.